Hi, and welcome to the Coaxum Report. I'm your host, Terry Coaxum. You can catch us live on Fire TV, on Apple, on Roku, and I'm super excited, topic community. I'd like to welcome our special guest today, Executive Director of Social Justice, my brother from another mother, Greg Bishop. How are you?
How you doing, Terry? How's everything?
I'm blessed. I'm blessed. Great. I am super excited to have you join us on the Coaxum Report. The Coaxum Report. So we are broadcast all over. We're in South America. You can catch us in the Caribbean, of course, in America. You can even catch us on WXTX Bloomberg Radio. So
Nice.
I'm glad to have you on today. I wanted to, one of the things that we do is we tell our listening audience who our guests are, and then we share with them some nuggets to help them to build, to grow, and just some ideas for them to be able to move into other spaces. So I want you to tell our audience what you're doing as the executive director of social justice, a little bit about your background, and let's get started.
Awesome. So thanks for having me. And
Absolutely.
as you mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Joe and Clara Sy Foundation's Social Justice Fund. The fund is a $50 million commitment that was made last year as a result of the racial justice protests that we saw emanating from the murder of George Floyd. And it was a commitment to address racial justice and economic mobility in Brooklyn. We heard a lot of companies step up and say that they wanted to do things related to racial justice, and the Sys, who are the owners of the Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty, felt that they also needed to do the same. And since then, we've been very busy.
I bet.
Yeah, a little bit more about that. But we created one of the first things we wanted to do was address the disparity that we see in our and we know this in our financial markets, and especially with access to capital for Black-owned businesses. So we created a loan fund for BIPOC businesses that address some of the structural racism that we know is inherent in our financial markets. So when you have the request for collateral and the request for guarantors, what we're not necessarily talking about is the fact that especially Black individuals may not have access to collateral, not because they can't, it's because they weren't allowed to, right? And so our loan fund, part of that $50 million commitment, we carved out $2.5 million to actually lend to Black-owned BIPOC businesses. And so far we were almost at 1.7 million.
Wow.
And about and we launched last June. We were expecting this to be a 3-year commitment. But we are now, almost, 1.7 million. 75% of those loans have been with Black women, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing there. So we've been pretty busy, but our focus is really on a number of things. And when we talk about social justice, there's economic mobility. So there's a workforce, there's entrepreneurship, but there's also criminal justice. There's also education. And without, and social justice, and Clara is really, a strong supporter of the arts. The arts is part of social justice. And so I'll talk a little bit about Belong Brooklyn and our installation that's right at the plaza that talks about you belong here, we belong here, from a Bahamian artist, Tavares Strawn. So that's the work.
Exciting.
I literally there's a lot of work happening. But prior to that, I was the commissioner, as Terry alluded to. We worked closely together on the federal and local level to address the issues that we're talking about, right? Which is, how do we get capital to our minority and women-owned businesses? How do we get individuals trained in, the sectors that are hiring in workforce? And how do we just build better communities and make investments in communities in our commercial corridors? So I was the commissioner for small business services for 5 years under the de Blasio administration. But I joined small business services actually in 2008 under the Yeah, under the Bloomberg administration, and my job was to resurrect. I worked with Deputy Commissioner Ann Roscone and at the time Commissioner Rob Walsh, and our job was to resurrect the MW program. Prior
That's
to
right.
that, Mayor Dinkins created the program, but for those who know New York history or maybe don't know New York history, one of the things that Mayor Giuliani did was campaign to eliminate the program.
Mhm.
But the good thing about it was that it wasn't an executive order; it was built into the city charter, so he couldn't eliminate it. So what did he do? He just zeroed out the budget, right?
That's right.
and
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so
That's how you eliminate it, right?
yeah, exactly. So for 8 years, the program just stayed dormant, right? And so when Bloomberg came in for the first 2 or 3 years, he had to focus on resurrecting our economy after 9/11.
That's
So really, about 12 years went by without any activity, and so. In late 2005 was when he started, putting resources to rebuild the program, and I joined the administration at that time to focus on like certification. So my background, a lot of my background is in economic development. It's in helping communities of color, and a lot of it is personal, Terry, because you may know this and your viewers may not. But I grew up in East Flatbush, right? But I was born in Grenada, in the Caribbean, so I know about the opportunity that this country affords us. And I came here when I was 7, but I grew up in East Flatbush, and I'm not saying that I grew up, I grew up privileged to some extent, right? But I grew up in a single family household.
Mhm.
My mom worked 2 jobs and helped put me through school, and I ended up at Brooklyn Tech, which was good, and I had a great education. But there's a lot of Greg Bishops out there who may not have the resources to understand how to apply to the right colleges, who may get lost in our education system and may not, have teachers who understand how you learn and adapt their teaching to help you, which is what happened at Brooklyn Tech. And I was able to like really have a really solid foundation. But there are students who are just, getting lost. And, the question is, what do we do with them? Right.
That's right.
And it's not just about, you just sort of like move on. It's no, let's find a way to tap into their potential. I call, the system called them at risk. I call them at promise, right?
Right.
They have something in them that we certainly should be able to tap into. And
And I
so
I agree with that. The one thing I'm going to pause you on, because I always tell people all the time, I don't believe they're bad students. I think
exactly.
students make bad decisions based on their circumstances.
That's right.
And so when
That's
you're
right.
talking about tapping into their potential and tapping into their promise, it's about what they're exposed to. When I was at the district attorney's office, I was able to mentor about 150 kids. And what
Yep.
did we do? We took those quote unquote at risk young people, and we exposed them to upstate New York and had them on
Mhm.
horses and took them to colleges and put them on basketball courts. We even had an area in Brooklyn where they told us that these kids, don't they wrote them off pretty much, right?
Yep. Yep.
So one of our officers created a DJ program in the park. And we had the kids in the park training to become DJs, and it changed the whole trajectory of these kids.
See, you've got to figure out how these
How to
kids
reach them,
learn, right? And
meet
how
them
to
where they
reach
at.
them. Yeah. And in some cases, and I get it, right? Some schools don't have the resources. We're having this conversation, 2 days after what 18 young
That's right.
kids were murdered and two
Tragically.
teachers, right? And so our education system, we are asking a lot from our teachers, right? We ask them to be on the front lines of the pandemic to
That's right.
it's a lot of parents realize like, wait a minute, like I have my child at home 24/7 now. I now truly understand what our teachers are going through. And so I get it. Like some
Yeah.
teachers
I've
need,
had parents say that. They're like, I can't wait to send my kid back to school. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, I had
right.
no idea.
And I believe that, one of the things we need to do as a community is invest in our teachers, right? And because we're
Absolutely.
asking a lot from them. And in some cases, they may, the class sizes may be too large. So the students that we're talking about may get, sort of like lost. And not everyone, goes to school to actually end up in college, right?
Right.
I certainly, when I was at Brooklyn Tech, I was a mechanical engineer, and so that spoke to me as a visual learner,
That's right.
and I learn by doing things, right? And so I, transferring over to college, just sort of felt lost because now I was sort of like in this different mode of learning that was not speaking to me. And when the web just came about and Mosaic just came out, and this thing called HTML, I was like, what is this thing, right? And so I taught myself how to code, and certainly, learned a lot. And I was stealing pictures from Vibe magazine. I'm sort of like, I don't know if your viewers may not know this, but there's a young man. I actually don't know what became of him. Hopefully he's working for the MTA now. But there was a young man who consistently would jump into the conductor seat of the A train
I
and
know
always
he's
steal
not
the A train.
working for MTA. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he literally and he would run the train as if he was,
Right.
you
You
know,
gotta drive it and everything.
and folks were
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, like give him a job, like. But so Vibe actually reached out to me and said, like, first of all, like you're stealing our copyright, like, cease and desist, otherwise we're going to sue you. But then they had a second paragraph that said, but we kind of like what you did. Like, why don't you come in and talk to us because we need you on our team.
Wow. See, I didn't know that part, Greg. So that's
Yeah,
cool. I'm learning something new.
I was like 19. So here it is. I'm 19, and my my path. I mean, I was in like the sort of like when you talk about teenagers, the bad behaving teenagers. I mean, I was a digitally bad behaving teenager.
He was like, I like that, so I'm gonna put it over here.
So I ended up getting an internship at Vibe, and that turned into a full-time job. So I dropped out of college, right? Because why am I spending money in and not necessarily learning? And that turned into a 7.5-year career, a very rewarding career in technology. So my point is that, I found my way, but there's other Greg Bishops who, if you have something that could open up an opportunity, and that's why at the Social Justice Fund, we are actually, working with organizations who are doing interesting things to address some of the systemic challenges that we see in our education systems, et cetera. And our goal is to cause disruption, right? We don't want to fund things that are not necessarily disruptive, because that's our goal, right?
Right.
We can't continue the status quo. That's one of the reasons why we created the loan fund, because the status quo has been that Black businesses were struggling prior to the pandemic, right? And so when we were like, okay, we need to help, and Clara says this all the time, is that we were right on the ground listening to the community. And one of the things she alludes it to is like PPEs. Like when the pandemic first started, we needed to get, those personal protective equipment out to our hospitals, our police departments, et cetera, as quickly as possible. And so we need to get capital out to our Black-owned businesses as quickly as possible, not to get them to the point of like where they were prior to pandemic, because that's the problem. Right?
Prior to pandemic didn't work for us. And I'm gonna pause you right there because we're gonna have we need to take a quick break. But you're absolutely right.
Oh, we're at the first break already?
Yeah, we're in the first break. I'm telling you, when you're having fun. But we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk, because you gave us a lot of nuggets. You talked about collateral, you talked about capital, you talked about young people, investing in young people and in our teachers, and more importantly, you talked about opportunities, obstacles that led to opportunities. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. So listening audience.
Give me more. We about to blow. Give me more. Give me more. We got one life, so we not gon' waste it. Live a large life, the rich and the famous.
I'm Charles Meriday, and I'm in the restaurant business. In my 20 years as a chef and restaurant owner, I've been able to work and eat in some of the great kitchens around the globe. There's a whole side of the restaurant that most people will never get to see. So now, I want to take you to the back of the house, into kitchens of some of the best chefs in the world. Along the way, I'll share some of my own tips and recipes so you can cook like a pro too. So join me in the back of the house for a whole new perspective on cooking and food. Order in. Roger. Serve it, please.
Bona fide.
I'm glad that you came. Please.
Drew on the key so they should not.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the Coaxum Report. You know, every time we go on commercial break, I always look at the food and want to be in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah, I was in Grenada for a wedding. Aisha Hines, one of my good friends, got married this weekend, and
oh, nice. So you enjoy the food.
The menu was callaloo soup and oiled down and roti and.
See, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
I had my
Welcome back. Welcome back
Yeah.
to the Coaxum Report. Again, you could join us on Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Roku, and you can the Coaxum Report is powered by the Marketplace, on our TV, and you can find us on WSTX Bloomberg. And today we're joined by Greg Bishop. And Greg, again, is a brother from another mother. He's our special guest today. He's a former commissioner for New York City Small Business Services and the current executive director of the Social Justice Fund. So before we left, Greg shared so many nuggets. Just a quick recap, right? He came out the gate, with all of this great information. So the first thing he talked about is the Social Justice Fund, what he's doing now, like his work, which is like the dream job. Your dream job is being able to invest in causes you believe in, right? So this is like the dream job for him, where he's able to invest in social justice, invest in Black and brown businesses, women-owned businesses. So he talked about that. He talked about the inequity when it comes to Black and brown businesses. And it's interesting, Greg, when you started talking about that, Anthony and I had a conversation earlier on about a business that received a contract from the city. And after receiving a contract, they were building out the contract to understand that they wouldn't get paid for 30 days. And so this justice fund that you're describing is something that seems like would fit right into that. And this is great because that's what this report is about, giving the small businesses that information. We have other groups that we had come on. LISC is going to be on with us next week. And the vice president for LISC is a good friend, a sister from another mister. Her name is Caitlin Kane. But Caitlin used to be the regional advocate for the New Orleans area, the Texas area. When I was with the Obama administration, I covered Region 2. She covered that region. So she's now VP at LIST. And then there's True Fund. Roberto is over at True Fund. And True Fund is another great organization that's doing a good work that you're speaking about. But you guys are stepping into the gap differently, because you're not asking, from my understanding of what you were explaining, you're not really asking for that collateral that a traditional institution would be looking for, which is a barrier, quite frankly, for most of our business. The other thing you talked about, and you said you'll get more into it, we're talking more about the women-owned business. One of the nuggets, and you'll love this, Janique Curry was with us from Buffalo last week. And Janique talked about NWBEs and the importance of that $1 billion spend and why our businesses should be an NWBE. And I talked about that being your license to hunt, but you still had to go, and get whatever that is that you're going to be able to be nourished by, right? And so you have the license with your certification, and now you got to go hunt, right? And then another thing that you talked about is our young people, investing in our young people, understanding that not everyone will go to college. And for our small businesses, especially our businesses and our entrepreneurs that or people that are just thinking about starting business, not everyone wants to go straight into college. Maybe you want to get the technical skills that you need to go and start your own business. And so Greg kind of told you about how his passion and taking these pictures and led into this 7-year career that led into these other things. And so I encourage our businesses and our entrepreneurs, or even our young people that are listening, to find your passion, right? And then with those obstacles, like the PPE that we were talking about, will lead probably into not even probably, those obstacles lead into opportunities. And so you stopped talking. We took a quick commercial break right there when you started talking about Claire and PPE and how that opportunity became how that obstacle became an opportunity. So I'm going to pitch it back to you. You gave us a lot of nuggets.
I know, and I really want to shout out, Clara Usai, because Clara really is passionate about this work. And so Joe and Clara, their foundation, they do a lot in terms of, on the science side and neuroscience side and the arts, but social justice was a strong commitment for them. And as the owners of the Nets and the Liberty, when the pandemic happened, their first focus was on the staff. Right. You remember the NBA halted all games. And so, I think it's good to have, just like when I was working both for Bloomberg and for de Blasio, when you have leadership at the top who's very passionate, it makes your work much easier.
That's right.
For the loan fund, I just want to let people know that if they are based in Brooklyn, that's the only catch. You have to be based in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Your company had to be viable in 2018. So what does that mean? It means that if you lost money in 2018, you wouldn't be eligible for our loan fund. But if you broke even, so even if your balance sheet showed zero or you made even $1 profit, right? We consider that business to be viable.
Okay.
The second thing is, and this is the interesting thing, because your viewers might be saying, well, why couldn't you just give me a grant? Well, we want to turn this into a community fund, right? Similar to, and a lot of your viewers might be familiar with the concept of a SUSU, right? So this $2.5 million, we wanted to continue to circulate even after we've moved on to other projects.
Right.
And the only way that's going to happen is if we have businesses that and in order to apply, you have to have a character reference from someone in the community that says, like, you, Terry, I know this business that Terry's running. I know Terry's character, and I know Terry will do everything possible to repay that loan, right? The reason why we made it a loan is that when you repay that loan, and you could borrow up to $100,000. So this model it's sort of like, we've seen this with, like, Kiva, and we've seen it.
That's right. That's what I thought about Kiva when you said
Right.
it. Mhm.
But they stop at $10,000, right?
That's
And
right.
most small businesses, like, 10,000 is a good start, but it's not necessarily, like, the sweet spot is usually about $50,000-$60,000 in terms of
That's
getting
right.
the right size capital. So
Mhm.
there's one thing to get capital, but to get the right size capital to actually help you build your business. So you can borrow up to $100,000. Our average loan size right now, in terms of the loans that we made, is about $30,000. So we're seeing, like, some large loans go out. And the reason why we're seeing, like, a lot of women-owned businesses, we're trying to figure that out, actually. I have my hypothesis, but one of the things
You're the woman. I'm just kidding.
one of the things I will tell you is that our systems, right? Our systems, in terms of when our systems evaluate risk. So when you go in front of a banker and the banker's trying to evaluate risk, the checks and balances that they use are detrimental to Black women. That's just a fact, right?
Wow.
And the reason I'm saying that is because, we now have a process where we are addressing that systemic racism that's built into the checks and balances, and who's benefiting the most? Black women, right? And one of the reasons why I'm saying that, we have to challenge our financial institutions to figure out alternative ways to measure risk is the fact that Black women are the more highly educated group, right? But that comes at a cost. It means that Black women carry more student loan debt than any other group out there, right?
Right.
You also know that women face additional barriers than men. Like, if I'm a woman entrepreneur, I'm asked certain questions that a male entrepreneur is not asked, right? And so there's a double whammy in terms of being Black and also being a woman. And so when you talk about the MW program, one of the things I encourage your viewers, and this is why it's important to also not only to be focused on your business, but also be civically engaged, is to hold your elected officials accountable. It's great to have an MW program. It's great to talk about all the goals that you have, but you have to talk about the actuals, right? And one of the things that I will tell you, coming in 2 different administrations, Bloomberg was resurrected the program, got the program up to, I think, about 8% utilization. De Blasio came in and said, okay, we need to do better. Created an office of MWBE, changed the law. Well, actually went up to Albany and changed the laws. And now when he left, it was about 30% utilization, right?
Wow. From 8% to 30%?
However, those numbers sound great. But however, when you dig deeper, we are still seeing a disparity within a disparity, because Black women are still down at 3%, right? Black women companies are much smaller, right? Because they're not getting the capital, the right size capital. So there's so many things that's happening with Black women. So it's great for us to see that Black women are actually benefiting from this loan program. If individuals are interested in learning more in terms of eligibility, et cetera, they can go to our website. It's www.bk, so it's for Brooklyn, BKSJF, Social Justice Fund. .org. So it's just bksjf.org. Funny that you mentioned True Fund, because we are actually not the lender, right? We provided the capital, but True Fund is our partner.
Nice. I didn't know that.
And the Brooklyn Chamber is our partner. And the Brooklyn Chamber is twofold, right? The Brooklyn Chamber is handling all the loans, all the microloans, anything up to 15,000. The Brooklyn Chamber is actually doing the underwriting. And that's actually helping build their capacity of their CDFI to lend to other small businesses in Brooklyn once our program is finished. but they are responsible for doing the outreach, and they have done a great job in terms of getting the word out to all areas of Brooklyn, from Brownsville to, Bed-Stuy to East New York to East Flatbush to Canarsie. These are communities that have not seen investments. And so we are really, really excited about that.
Wow, that's some great information. I had no idea, but I do know, because we worked with these lending institutions, both in the city and me when I was with the Small Business Administration. So I'm always trying to give these nuggets to our small businesses. One of the others that wasn't mentioned that's also a really good one is the Hebrew Free Loan Society.
Yeah, I'm actually on the Marco Lending Committee.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, so that's another really good one. And so what I'm going to encourage the listeners to do is to look in your city, your state, your country for different organizations, public and private organizations that are doing this type of work, especially now with economic justice being at the forefront of everything else that we're doing. There's a lot of even corporate companies that I'm seeing, a lot of them, I won't call any names because I don't have the permission to do that yet, but there's a lot of corporations that are actually giving money to small businesses, to women-owned business, to Black businesses, to Black and brown businesses. And so I encourage all of our listeners to, look at some of those, or looking at some of those corporate organizations and see what they're doing. The Hebrew Loan Society is one of them here, but when you go in DC, there are several others. Look for your chambers. See what your chambers are doing. Greg said it best. Look and see what your elected officials, hold your elected officials' feet to fire. Ask them what is available in your county, your state, and your country so that you can have access to capital. And Greg, the biggest barrier when I was in the Small Business Administration, I don't care what audience I spoke to. If I asked the question to small businesses, what was the biggest barrier? Access to capital. Access to capital.
I was going to say, what I found was the information, right? Information is power, and so many small businesses.
That's why we got the Coaxum Report.
They did not know where to start. They did not know where to start. And you're right. Like in terms of like what a business needs, it's like access to capital. Then the next thing is workforce, right? It's like finding the right people, right? And then the next thing,
technical support.
I literally was going to say, it's like, understanding technology and understanding how to be competitive in this marketplace, right? So one of the interesting things is that when you do get a loan from us, you actually are eligible for free technical assistance. And we baseline your business. We tell you where you are and what areas you need to strengthen your business. And then we provide you access to business experts to actually help you build out we have a whole curriculum where, one of the first things we heard from businesses was, help me understand my finances, right? Help me understand, am I making money?
That goes back to access to capital. That goes back. Know where you are. Know what your bottom line is, right? Know where, if you're making money or if you're not making money. Know where you can make money. Have a plan.
Exactly. And then the second thing was, help me with marketing, right? One of the things we do is, if you go to our website, you'll see, or on social media, we're at the Social Justice Fund, our Instagram account, you'll see testimonies from some of the businesses that we've helped. And one of the things that we heard from them is I actually don't know how to do a 30-second pitch of my business, right? I actually don't know how to do a minute pitch. And so we're like, we'll help you, right? We'll help you develop an SEO strategy. And people are probably, what SEO? What is that? Well, it's search engine optimization. It means, because we're in a mobile world, where's my camera? There it is. Because we're in a mobile world, I literally, I'm in Toronto right now, and the first thing I did to order lunch was I went on Uber Eats, right?
That's right.
So these are apps that's out there, right? But I could also gone on Google and search for Thai food or West Indian
food. Nearest restaurant.
If you don't have the right search engine optimization tag words, if you don't have a robust website, you're missing out on customers. And you have to have not only the marketing, but you have to have the logistics. If you're a retail store, you have to be able to deliver those products. People sometimes say Amazon is killing small businesses, but the small businesses, especially our local businesses, have an advantage, right?
That's right.
They're hyper local. They know their customers. When I go to the bodega, literally when I walk in, they know that I want a mango, banana peanut butter shake with vanilla protein. And
Okay, so we're gonna pause right there. We're gonna pause right there. So we need to take
we got to
another
take a
quick
break. Okay.
and we'll be right back talking about our local businesses. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.
You know you are a hot one. We are lime, we are laugh, we are chat, we no chill, we are hot one. Temperature rise, beer vibes in this a hot one. Link up, connect, bust a sweat when you're the on the hot one. We gonna spice it up like fire.
back. Yo, this has been an exciting show. Again, this is the Coaxum Report. You can find us on Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV. You can also find us on Roku. We're part of our TV marketplace. We're also one of our partners is Tempo. And so I'm on today with Greg Bishop, and Greg has been giving us a lot of nuggets on first of all access to capital, technical support. We've also spoken about giving our young people opportunities. We talked about giving our teachers opportunities. We talked about taking obstacles and turning them into opportunities. And then when we were just having a little break, Greg was talking to us about small business, talking about how you investing in your small business every day. Basically, that local bodega know exactly who he is when he comes in to get his smoothie, and how investing back into that business is important. And one of the things, Greg, that we've spoken about on the show, especially around the pandemic and a little after the pandemic, I encourage all of my listeners to utilize your local business, because that's the only way they're going to stay in business. So use your local cleaners, use your local laundromat, use your local bodega, because those are the businesses that you expect them to be there. But guess what? If they don't have any customers, they can't stay there. So that was really important that you brought that up. And then one other thing, marketing.
Yep.
Marketing is so important. Greg just hit it right out the park. But marketing before the pandemic, Greg, it was like really shaking customers to make them understand how important marketing was. When everything closed down during the pandemic and they couldn't sell their widget or their service, they realized, one, how important marketing was, and secondly, how important technology was.
Mhm.
So I'm going to pitch it back to you, because you touch all of those things in our last segment.
When you talk about supporting your local small business, it's not just about supporting that entrepreneur, right? Those small businesses are the fabric of our communities. And so, when I was commissioner, we're working on the vacancy issues, and you know what vacant storefronts do to order. But it's more than just vacant storefront. These small businesses are sort of like the first opportunity for a young person to get a job.
That's
right. And so when you think about I get to sweep, the store and make a certain amount of money, that is important, right? That it's the job creation. One of the things people don't realize is that our small businesses in New York City, and New York City, we have about 200 and some odd thousand small businesses. They're the economic engine of the city. Even though they're hiring maybe 2 or 3 individuals, they're the ones that's actually doing and providing the opportunity for our young people, for the communities. So that is definitely something that we are, and I encourage people to support small businesses and to really, help those businesses, succeed. And so that it's more than just the fabric of our communities, right? It's literally, those are the businesses that are the community.
That's right. And they know who you are. And I think it was really important. I had to pause right in the middle of your smoothie, but it's really important. When I walk in, they know I need a black coffee, right?
Yep.
Especially when I walk in during the middle of the day, they be like, "Mommy, Steve." They're ready. They're like, "All right."
That is what you call, right? That is what you call a competitive advantage.
I love it.
Right? That is what you call a competitive advantage, because I don't want to have to go to some place and create my profile and you have to tell them what I want over and over and over again. Right? There's a lot of organizations, and when I say organizations, companies that are trying to recreate that experience, right? And they're calling it artificial intelligence, right? It's trying to remember all the things that you do, and it's trying to develop a behavior pattern based on your cookies and all that kind of stuff. This stuff is innate in our small business owners, right? They know, when something comes in, I'm going to set this aside for Terry because I know she likes this pattern. I know she likes, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And
I'm hooked, line, and sink. I walk through the door and I said, "I'm not buying but one thing," and I walk out with a bag.
Right, exactly. But the other thing I would tell you is that, as I mentioned, AI, it's that our business owners, you can't be afraid of technology, but you also, in terms of your listeners, you have to learn the language of today, right? So artificial intelligence, what is that? What is it doing? How is it going to impact us? I remember a startling report when I was commissioner. As AI increases the use of, as companies increase the use of AI, the group that's going to be more disadvantaged than any other group is Black men, right? Because the jobs that they do are easily replaceable by artificial intelligence, right? And so those are the things that you have to think about as, leaders, in terms of like what type of training, right? I always think about the Metro card, right? And I'm dating myself because in New York City, I remember when there was a token, right?
Oh yeah.
and,
Me too.
and in order to get on the train, you had to go to the token booth clerk, right?
That's
And buy like a 10 pack of tokens, right? And then you drop the tokens in. And when the Metro card came in with this machine, everybody was like, wait a minute, it's going to replace our. And what the unions did was they trained all the token booth clerks how to actually service the machines, right? And so we are in a digital revolution. So we cannot be afraid of technology. Instead, we have to, and going back to, I'm going full circle, we have to make sure that our young people they understand the language, right?
That's right.
So when you talk about Web3, what is Web3, right? We know crypto is like all over the place right now, but still we need to understand the language. We need to understand the language of NFTs. We need to understand those languages. And therefore, when companies are ready to enter into that space, if they do enter that space, we have a community that not only knows the language, but can actually speak the language and I can actually operate in that space. That's how I was able to build my career. Nobody knew what HTML was. Nobody knew how to code. And I came out of the gate with there was only like 4 or 5 of us. I remember distinctly, there was like the Hit List, which was a website. He was based in Philly. There was like Jamie's Crack House. I know the name is crazy, but that was that was based in, I think he was based in Indiana. There was me, The Suicide, which was a homage to Das Effects, like Sua, not suicide, Sua, SEWA, for like underground hip hop. That was a homage to Das Effects. There was like 4 of us in terms of like hip hop websites out there, and we were cutting edge. We were like way ahead of the curve, and that's what we have to prepare our young people to be able to speak that language. So whether it's technology, whether it is, clean energy, we're about to build a whole bunch of wind farms on the shores of Long Island, off the shores of Long Island and Brooklyn. Like, what does that mean? What's the opportunity there? What's the opportunity in the maritime industry for our young people? We, as in New York City, we are a city of islands. People don't realize that we are surrounded by water, with the exception of the Bronx, right? And so why do our young people in East New York not think about a career in the maritime industry, right? These are all of the things when I talk about opportunity, like we have to figure out in terms of the industry, where an industry is going. So we have to have a dialogue with industry, right? We cannot vilify companies. We have to have a dialogue with them. We have to hold them accountable as well.
But we also have to give our young people access to these
That's right.
different industries, because if they can't see it, they won't understand that this is something that they can do.
But our industries, and I'm not going to let our industries off the hook, need to
absolutely not.
understand that sometimes that young person may not come with the pedigree that they're used to, right?
Absolutely.
They may not have like the college degree, may not have like, certain, scores on their SATs, right? But what they have is, to your point, the passion, or like the intellect or the acumen in terms of, I understand this stuff, right?
That's right.
Like literally, I saw this in my neighborhood. It just looks differently, but what you're asking me to do, I was able to do in my neighborhood. And so you have to have, similar to how we're challenging the financial markets to look at alternative ways of evaluating risk, you have to be able and I'm challenging all the HR, organization, all the HR departments and all the organizations out there to find alternative ways to evaluate talent, right? Because you never know which Greg Bishop you're turning away by looking at traditional ways of evaluating talent.
It's interesting that you said that. I started a wellness foundation a couple of years back. It's called the Coaxum Connects Wellness Foundation. So on the surface, the Wellness Foundation is responsible for working with adults with mental illness and just giving them, because I wrote a book called Peaceful Pondering, A Busy Woman's Guide to Inner Peace. And so it literally is giving you nuggets and different things to kind of de-stress and put yourself first, and no is the complete answer. But on the other side of it, the funds from that is going into young people My
There you go.
goal is to take fifth graders. I
Yep.
want to take young people from fifth grade, and I don't want all A students. I want the quote unquote, as you began, at risk students,
Yep.
right? Or at I want to take them from fifth grade throughout college, and I want to pay for it all. I want to
Mm,
make sure that they have equestrian lessons. I want to make sure that they have etiquette training. I want to make sure that they have a mentor and a sponsor because everything can't be free. So we
mhm.
want to invest in these young people, and then we want to give them access to these organizations, to these public-private relationships that you're describing, that they may not even know that the maritime industry exists because that's not how they're looking at the world. So
Right.
bringing in those organizations to these young people and these young people into the
It's all
organization,
about exposure.
bridging that gap along the way would be the Bill and Melinda Gates of the hood.
Yeah.
Next level, simply because I know it works. I know
Yeah.
it works. So it's really important that we are coming full circle with this conversation. Yes, we're talking about our entrepreneurs. We've given them nuggets. We talked about access to capital. We talked about technical support. We talked about technology. You even went into talking about marketing, which again, before the pandemic, it was like shaking, right? Now it's like, I need to market my business, right?
Yep.
So we talked about access to all of that. We talked about this wonderful social justice fund that you're a part of now with Clara and Joe, that's doing all these wonderful things in Brooklyn, but other public-private partnerships across the country, across the world that are doing similar work. We need to make sure that our listeners understand that there are people out there that care about them and that are looking to invest in their growth. And so that's the biggest part of this conversation. That's why I'm super excited. I like my Pocahontas moment. You learn things you never knew, right?
Right.
This has been a great conversation. So I know it's almost time for us to wind down.
Ah,
But before I
that
know,
always happens.
silly how time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
I want you to leave just a couple of nuggets with our listening audience, because you gave a lot. Like I said, you came out the gate. You was like swinging out the gate. So
Yeah.
you started off with our young people. You kind of ended it really with our young people as well, and understanding that we must invest in them. And one of the things I did today, I did a career day at ISPS 292 in East New
Mm,
York, Vermont. And so always making sure that we're giving back to the young people. And of course, I teach at Medgar Evers College. So
yeah.
making sure that we're building them up. But want you to leave with us, you have this wonderful social justice program. You've been in this industry for a long time. You understand the barriers, the best practices, and the big ideas. What would you leave with our listening audience that they can take this thing to the next level?
Oh man, the thing, Terry, I'm going to say with the time we have left is really don't be afraid to fail. It's
Ah,
literally I could talk about a whole bunch of things, but I just think about the thing that holds us back in terms of success is fear, right? And
wow.
sometimes we have the moment. It's that moment where we have to take that leap of faith, right? But we're afraid, and I understand why we're afraid, right? It's our capital, right? It's our hard-earned capital that we don't come from wealth. There's so many different reasons. I think about when I was 27, going back to school, right, to actually get my bachelor's degree, and I was afraid that I would not be successful. And so don't be afraid to fail, right? For every successful entrepreneur, if you ask them, there's like about 10 failures behind them. All you see is the success, right? And so don't be afraid to fail, strike out, and just move forward. And if you do fail, guess what that's called? Experience.
Wow, excellent. Thank you so much, Greg, for being a part of the show Travel Safely. And I look forward to collaborating on some more partnerships in the future. Let's build wealth together. Thank you for joining us on the Coaxum Report. Have a
Thanks
good
for
day,
having me, Terry.
everybody.
Take care.